part of the TIES event today, and especially thrilled about the connection to the foundation to support children through Satya. So if any of you are inclined to give today, I'll circle back at the end of the webinar to reiterate this. I am ready and willing and heartful open to offer a coaching call to anyone who donates $101 for the first 5 people. So the first 5 people to donate and make their contribution, if you provide evidence to me of that contribution, we'll set up a coaching call to help you cultivate your own happiness plan. So a little more about me. As Ekta said, I am a school leader. I'm an educator, a consultant, and a social justice advocate. My specializations come in topics of well-being, especially around happiness, diversity, equity, inclusion, and service learning. I have 21 years in education, most of that spent in the international sector. And I'm the founder of Happiness 101. That was an action research project with students of mine as we were looking at how can we teach children the habits for happiness and well-being. My own life experiences have led me to do a deep dive in understanding what happiness is and how we can take care of our own selves so that we can show up in the world in really powerful ways to help make a difference in the lives of the people we interact with. Often when we talk about ourselves, we talk about the things that we do. And underneath that for me is a strong sense of why I do what I do. My why and what keeps me in this game is I intend to inspire and nurture others to be their best selves, growing, contributing, and belonging to something bigger than one individual so that together we can build a better world. Right now, I'm deeply committed to helping individuals understand their own sense of happiness and well-being and how they can bring that into their work environments, their homes, and into the classrooms where many of us are teaching and working. If we can think about that sense of contributing to the happiness and well-being of others, while also looking after the happiness and well-being of ourselves, I am convinced that the world would be a much better place for all of us. So today our key focus is looking at happiness as an aspiration. Happiness is an aspiration of every human being, and it can be achieved through the ways that we live our lives. We'll take a little bit of a look today what we mean by happiness, making sure we're sharing the same sense of a definition. And then we'll look at how we can cultivate happiness both in yourself and in your community. Before we dive in, I'm going to extend an invitation for you to join me for the next 2 to 3 minutes to release tension and set intention for how we are in the space that we are in together. We want to give ourselves that idea of priming the emotions that we want to bring into a space. As educators, we often talk about the idea of understanding by design, being clear on the end results that we want to achieve, and then we live into those moments. So I'm going to give you the invitation right now to be really clear on how you want to receive the information that you are invited to join today. What is it that you want to bring into the space? What do you need to release to be able to do that? What do you want to bring as you release? What do you want to replace? And finally, how can you be in joy as we're in this time together? So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just take a moment. Release your hands of anything that you may be holding. Sit tall and straight, comfortably in your space, bringing your chin away from the chest, forward, your shoulders back, your chest and heart open and ready to receive. Your hands relaxed in your palm. Close your eyes. And in your mind, repeat the words, release, release, release. As you do, command into your body to release all the tension in your shoulders, in your neck, in your face, and in your jaw. Release the tension in your back and in your legs. Release the tension in your mind and spirit. If this is hard for you in this moment, just focus on each part of your body, breathing deeply, and repeat the word release in your mind. Tuning into your breath and sending your breath deeply to any part of you that still feels tension. When you feel that you've released some intention, and when you're doing this on your own, you won't release all of the intention or the tension that you have in your body. Just release what you can in this moment. And now we're going to move into setting an intention. This means thinking about how you want to feel and what you want to achieve in the next activity that you're about to take on. When you're ready to open your eyes, ask yourself, what energy do I want to bring into this next activity? How can I do this next activity with excellence and joy? How can I enjoy the process? So breathing in deeply, imagine yourself with an open heart and an open mind, experiencing this next moment with joy, with a sense of curiosity and a sense of wonder. Breathing in deeply, breathing in peace and joy, and releasing out any tension that may be lingering. Bringing your focus back into the space that we're in together. This is an invitation that I give to you anytime you're in transition to take a moment, take 2 minutes to think about who you want to be in the next space. What tension do you need to release from the moment you were just in previously? I use for myself even door frames as a reminder of transitioning from one thing into the next, of thinking, who do I want to be in this meeting I'm about to walk into? Who do I want to be as I walk through the hallways? How do I want to greet my morning and my day? Who do I want to be at the end of the day before I walk into the house? I take 2 minutes and I just release. And I picture myself walking into the door with a smile and just, hello, how was your day? To my son, and thinking about how I want to cultivate a sense of joy between us. We just took a 2-minute meditation break or 2-minute mindfulness moment. This is something that is really important to our own sense of happiness and well-being. There's so many benefits to meditation. One is that we're able to be more present in the moment. We have increased attention in what we're doing in the moment that we're in it. We're able to disengage from distractions that might be around us and have more key focus in our time. We can release stress. Now, this is a really important one to jump in on. Sometimes people will say to me, well, I don't need to meditate. I like to play dodgeball to release stress, or ride my bike, or exercise. And those are excellent and important habits for taking care of your body. And they do help get that energy going in your body. They also can release some endorphins. And those endorphins can, over time, take a toll on your body. So even though they're positive, it's a positive stress. Use stress. It's still stress on your body and on your mind. And the meditation practices that you get into can help release some of that stress, whether it's the eustress or distress. And both are important to kind of keep it an equal level within our body and help our body re-find its sense of balance. Meditation also can help us with that sense of becoming more sincere of who we are. Helps us become more present with who we are in each moment, and allows us to be sincere and authentic with the people around us. It can help us change our perspective, going from that victim mindset that might keep us on the defensive and looking at where others might be wrong in a situation, or feeling that people are imposing things on us, to help us being present in the moment and being able to disengage from that sense of defensiveness and become more of a victor, willing to take on feedback for growth, willing to look at our own contributions to the moments that we're in. So I call that a shift from victim to victor mindset. It can help us let go of emotional drama faster. If we're releasing the tensions, we're not compounding stress and drama throughout the day. We're just in the moment that we're in, and we don't need to get caught up in drama that might be coming our way. And it also helps us amplify creativity. One of my favorite things about a good 20-minute meditation session is I often walk out with creative answers to things that have been going on, or problems that I'm facing, or solutions that I'm seeking, I walk away with this heightened, incredible sense of creativity. And meditation also allows you to access higher energy sources throughout your day. Even this 2-minute meditation, if you're in a harried moment throughout your day, just taking 2 minutes can help. Research is showing us that 20 minutes is the optimal window for adults. If you can't access 20 minutes, take 2. Those 2 minutes throughout your day can help add up. And then finally, I think one of the most important, there are hundreds of benefits, but I think at the end of the day, one of the most important is that meditation allows us to live with greater joy and happiness, allows us to access the well of happiness that we have within us. So I keep talking about happiness. What do we mean by happiness? I think we all have our own definitions. So I'm going to ask you to take a moment and drop into the chat box. What does happiness mean to you as we're talking about it? Let's just get it out there. Actually, if you wouldn't mind, what does happiness mean to you?
For me, happiness is a peaceful night of sleep, and being with people that I love. So yeah, these two would probably just be the most important things for me. But from the chat that's coming up, we have being at inner peace, being with family, contentment, finding joy in simple things, like a lot of inner peace and a lot of family values that are coming up, living on your own, tea and books. Somebody says happiness is sitting in the mountains, sunsets and sunrises, living without fear, caring, being happy, good health. Yeah.
Excellent. Actually, thank you so much for sharing those. I'm hearing so much about that sense of that inner peace, that connection to others, that sense of well-being. We're not talking about those fleeting moments there. Those are the things that anchor us. So throughout our conversation today, when I'm talking to you about happiness, I'm talking about there's a difference. I'm talking about the evaluative happiness, right? Not the affective happiness. Affective happiness is that sense of, oh my God, I just had the most amazing bowl of chocolate ice cream. It is amazing. And then 10 minutes later, I'm stressed out again. That's the ups and downs. That's the affective happiness, the buying a beautiful dress, or just having a moment of elation. That's the affective happiness. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about evaluative. It's that overall evaluation of your life where you can take a look at it and say, I'm happy. I have such a balanced life. I have beautiful people in my life. I have contribution. I have a sense of freedom. I have a sense of choice and agency in my life. And that's the evaluative happiness that we're talking about. The UN's definition really looks at that sense of evaluative happiness. The UN has been doing extensive research on happiness with the request that we begin to measure what counts in life. In 1972, Bhutan was one of the first countries to look at measuring gross national happiness. It's a term, GNH is a term that Bhutan coined as it started to look at measuring the subjective well-being of its citizens to set its goals and aspirations for what they needed to do to improve their country. Their argument was that if we measure gross national happiness, we can actually increase our income and our country's productivity and output, versus if we focus on economics, we might miss some key points of happiness. So in 2011, the UN General Assembly adopted the happiness towards a holistic definition of development resolution. Within that resolution, it invited its member nations to begin measuring gross national happiness and setting goals accordingly. In 2012, the first report was released and Happiness 101 was born, coincidentally. The World Happiness Report looks at some measures and trends internationally and can help us establish what we're seeing within different countries and different habits and practices that nation states can take up to look after the well-being. Resulting from this, we also have some reports on childhood well-being that the United Kingdom was one of the first nations to release. Since then, South Korea, Japan, Thailand, Israel, certain states in the US, France, Italy, they've begun measuring the happiness and well-being of their children. The indicators are looking at that measures of childhood well-being and subjective well-being are a strong indicator or predictor of what gross national happiness will be for its member nations. The United Nations uses some key frameworks that they're looking at when they measure for happiness and well-being within nation states. They look at a sense of community vitality, and that can be bucketed in and looking at things like donations, relationships, family connectedness, and general personal safety. They look at good governance, which if we're looking at that at the national level, we're looking at government performance, the fundamental rights of individuals, services, and political participation. If we were to look at that and measure the happiness and well-being of our own organizations, we would look at that as the systems and processes that we have in place that allow people to get on with their work effectively. We would look at a sense of voice and choice within the organizations. If you're looking at a school, do teachers feel that they can make decisions and contribute to the governance that's happening within the school? That would also look at issues around safeguarding as well. Cultural diversity and resilience looks at a sense of your language is being valued, cultural participation, artistic skills happening. Dringlam Namza was something in Bhutan where it looked at national dress and that sense of cultural pride. Ecological diversity and resilience looks at the environmental responsibility, whether or not there's wildlife damage in an area, urbanization issues. In schools, you can start looking at it with gardening programs and forest schools and that connection to natural life and well-being. You could look at it as outdoor camps and really helping individuals understand that connection to nature and its connection to our own sense of happiness and well-being. Living standards will look at assets, housing, income. Education looks at that sense of literacy, schooling, knowledge, and value. Within a school, you could use your data analysis to help you look at some predictors of happiness and well-being. You could look at your pedagogical practices, those units of inquiry. Do students see themselves in the learning that's taking place? Health is that sense of mental health, self-reported health status, health days that an organization offers or that a nation really supports. Senses of disability with individuals who have disabilities. Do they feel a sense of contribution and that they are looked after as well? With the psychological well-being, we are looking at issues of life satisfaction, emotions, and spirituality. Do members feel that they have that opportunity to look after their own well-being and have resources surrounding them? And time use with that sense of work, sleep, personal fulfillment, and contribution. When you take away that sense of good governance within an organization and living standards, the very, very basic needs being met, time use becomes one of the greatest indicators for a sense of well-being, especially because we start looking at areas of sleep and personal fulfillment. Where am I making contribution in life? If those three domains are strong, one of the domains that is really, really important, that can give you what they say, the biggest bang for your buck, is looking at that sense of community vitality. There's some simple actions that organizations can take, and because this bucket is most highly correlated to happiness after your basic needs. And that would look at that sense of contribution to others, community relationships, time with loved ones, safety and belonging in community. Does everyone feel connected? Here's where we're going to even look at that sense of diversity, equity, inclusion. Do all members of our community feel safe and valued, that they're looked after, and that who they are matters in the community that we're a part of? And that sense of reciprocity, reciprocal nature. This is an area that I think Toddle is doing an excellent job with supporting, with connecting communities, and even that opportunity today to contribute to a foundation that's really looking after the health and vitality of children in India being impacted by COVID. There's such simple things that organizations can do to look after their own sense of community vitality. So if this is one area where within your organization or as an individual, you say, I think I'm good in the other areas. Well, where can I contribute to others? Where can I have an impact and know that I matter and can make a difference? So in that sense of measuring what counts, subjective well-being is such an important predictor of the growth of organizations and nations and the success of sustainable practices. So if you're an organization deeply committed to helping bring the sustainable development goals into practice, looking at that sense of well-being within your community can be a predictor of whether or not your community will buy into sustainable development practices and whether or not over time they commit and make a difference within them, especially in that sense of connection to environment and nature. If we have an emotional connection to nature, if we have an emotional connection to the well-being of others, we're more likely to engage in practices for sustainability. One organization that I would highly recommend that you check into is called Happiness Alliance. Happiness Alliance has been working with John Helliwell, who has written the Happiness Report on helping individuals measure for their own subjective well-being. There's a free test that you can take on Happiness Alliance, and the report will come back and tell you where you're in your best alliance and where you might be off a little bit. And what would you want to dive into? I'm going to do with you today a very, very, very highly simplified version of the Happiness Alliance results and ask you to think about where do you feel you need the most support in your personal life right now. X is going to help me out with presenting a poll for all of you to respond to today. And the questions, where do you feel you need the most support? You can look at health, time use, community vitality, psychological well-being, or cultural diversity and resilience. So that cultural diversity is that connection to the arts and entertainment. And let's see what's coming up.
You can just see the numbers running and increasing on certain criteria. Yeah.
And I'm seeing it neck and neck between time use and psychological well-being, which doesn't surprise me. We have educators on the call. We are in the middle of a pandemic. We are in a global health crisis here. And so it doesn't surprise me to see where these numbers are coming at. So we're looking at time use and psychological well-being.
Yeah.
Exa, we're going to jump in. Psychological well-being is the number one that's coming up.
Yes.
We're going to jump into a coaching call in just a moment and take a look at the number two that's coming up. And before we do that, I want to take a moment to comment on that sense of psychological well-being. If you're not feeling well in that area, I would strongly encourage you to look for help, look for accountability partners, allies, whether it's a coach or a therapist, finding a connection that can help you anchor yourself into that sense of psychological well-being. As we go on today, we're going to talk about some other habits that can help increase that for you. But the most important thing for you today is to know you're not alone. This is an area that we've all been struggling with. And as we're in May, a month that's dedicated for mental health, I just want to send out to you that if you're really having a hard time right now and really struggling, please do reach out, find an ally. And if you can't find someone, if you don't have anyone in your corner, please send me an email and I'll help you find that connection. Ekta and I are going to jump in and look at the number two, that sense of time use that came up at 30% today. So time use is an area where they feel they need the most support. And the happiness index scores coming from the Happiness Alliance would say that over time, this is the number one area where people feel they need support. And for educators, this is by far the number one area where educators feel they need support when school's in session. So Ekta, let's jump in. Some of the indicators of feeling that you're off balance with time are a sense of always feeling rushed from one thing to another. Boy, can I relate to that as an educator. Yes. Not having enough time to do the things that you want to do. And that can even be diving in and doing some things for well-being. If you feel you don't have enough time, often the thing we put to the side is taking care of ourselves. And that's the last thing we should be putting to the side. And then another indicator that time balance is off is struggling to be in the moment and enjoying the things that you're doing. So Ekta, talk to me. With your educator hat on, what is your day like for you? What makes you say that time balance is off?
I feel like a lot of people view teaching as, oh, you're just going, talking to children, especially in the early years, because I was an early years educator. So it's more like, oh, you're just interacting, you're just playing, there's not much to it. But they don't realize that, we have to be like very alert 24/7 when we're with such young children. And most of the time during the day goes to taking care of their, individual needs. So when we come home with so much of like coursework to complete, in the terms of paperwork has to be done, assessments, portfolios, all of that. So you're bringing in so much of work home that you're not getting time to spend with your family. You're not getting time to, spend on yourself. And that kind of like puts everything, just you're not able to maintain that balance for yourself. And that's my struggle as an educator.
I can completely relate to that. And if we're not careful, Axa, one of the things that teachers often end up in is burnout, and they
Yeah.
leave the profession. So burning out is not good practice because it makes us not available for the children. And often it means we're going to end up leaving the classroom. And that's not what any of us want. So there's some things that we can do for action for happiness. So Exa, one of the first things we were working together over time that I ask you to do is a time audit. I had a head of school once that said, when we do an audit of an organization, we usually do a financial audit. We look at where we're spending our money, and then we check and say, are we spending the money on the things that we actually value? Do things align? He said, show me your checking account, show me your balance, and I'll tell you what you value. And that is so true in the same way for how we spend our time. If we do a time audit and look at where am I spending all of my time? Does this match what really matters? I know when we first went into lockdown, when I did a time audit, I realized I was always in front of the computer. And then when I was off the computer, I was so exhausted, I was Netflixing. And then it was this crazy cycle. So the first thing I would.
I can't hear you, Erin.
Let me.
Yeah, now it's better.
Perfect. So one of the other things that you would want to do in a time audit is look at how much you're sleeping. Research shows us that most people aren't getting enough sleep in their day, and sleep is the #1 indicator for both psychological well-being and physical well-being. So I would look with you to see if you're getting at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep. 8 is the better window. 7 is minimum. And I know so many teachers who will say, I get 5 hours of sleep a night. That sense of protecting your work-life balance is really important. Now, let's check in on that a little bit. When I talk about balance, when you love what you do, it's hard to find balance because you're in a flow. You just love it so much. But one of the questions I would encourage teachers to ask themselves is this thing I'm spending a lot of time on really that important? If I'm going to spend 8 hours on one learning engagement and making sure everything is just perfect, is that the right way to invest my time? And making sure that you're really clear on what counts and how you're investing your time in that. Ekta, do you feel that you have any kind of morning routine that's serving you right now?
For me, I feel like waking up 1 hour early in the morning to just have me time. You don't need to do anything. You can just like sit with yourself, like just quietly, just introspect or just nothing at all. Just sit with yourself. And I feel like that kind of gives me the motivation to get into work.
Yes. Yeah. And that morning routine, that morning habit is one of the most powerful things that you can do for yourself. Research has shown that some of the most highly effective people have really strong morning habit routines. So for myself, when I did a time audit and I looked and I said, I am so off balance. I'm working until late in the evening. I'm not spending time with family and not spending time on the things that I love. But I feel this sense of obligation and commitment to my community. But then it was a cycle. I started resenting it a little bit. I wasn't good for anyone. So working backwards, I said, okay, one thing that I could shift would be a morning routine. And Ekta, just as you said, you have that morning routine. Thinking about how you're using that morning routine is really, really important. If you get clear on one moment and you work yourself backwards throughout the rest of your day, you'll see, well, what are the other things that will need to shift? If I want an effective morning routine, well, then I need to go to bed at a decent hour. What's happening that keeps me from going to bed at a decent hour? Okay, I'm spending too much time in front of the computer, and so now I need a nighttime routine. And you can just see all of the other ripple effects that will come. One morning routine that I recommend that people establish is thinking about maybe 3 things they would want to achieve in that hour. For myself, I've now created what I call my 20 cubed morning routine. It's 20 minutes of meditation, 20 minutes of exercise, So I do yoga or Pilates, or sometimes it's going for a quick little walk if the weather is nice. And then I have a book that I listen to on Audible for 20 minutes while I'm doing my other routines. And that's my reading for growth. So I consider that on top of having a healthy breakfast, I'm feeding my mind with positive messages. I'm feeding my mind with things that'll get me started for the rest of the day so I can be inspiring and be positive and be balanced. The other thing that I highly recommend for people as they're thinking about this is where there's other little teeny moments throughout the day where you can unplug and invest in yourself. Set a little timer on your watch that's going to remind you, get up and walk around, reshift your energy. If you feel tension building up in your shoulders, get up and just do some rotations on your shoulders. 2 minutes is all it takes. Ekta, thank you so much for sharing your concerns. I love hearing you have a morning routine. And if we have time together, I would look at some other areas in your life where you can help eke more time out of your day intentionally. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you.
Now, we just did a little bit of a quick survey. If we do a coaching call together, you'll have the opportunity to take the survey. We'll look at it together and create a happiness plan for yourself. So for the first 5 people who show me they've donated 101 to the foundation, we'll have the opportunity to look at your own sense of well-being and what we can dive into and make some tweaks. In the same way, there's a happiness survey that I do with students. I usually do this paper and pencil, but I also have developed an online one that students can take that allows me to look at individual children, just as I would do a reading running record or a math pre-assessment, that lets me know where they are and what things I need to start bringing both into the classroom environment and where I may need to check in on an individual child. This helps me gather a snapshot of a child's self-perception of their well-being, their connection to their self and community. Do they have tools for stress management? Do they have a growth mindset? Do they have healthy life habits? Just as we think about the thoughts that we put into our minds, because that impacts how we are in the day, even our nutrition impacts how we're able to function and be in space. So this survey, this snapshot is my baseline that then has me introduce habits for happiness and well-being. When I was in the classroom, I used these in my morning meeting messages. I tied them to the learner profile and the approaches to learning skills and started to jump in and do little mini lessons with children on habits for happiness and well-being. They loved it and they really took off with agency. And this is something that I've also started to practice with adults. So if I do my own survey, I say, okay, I'm just off. Things just aren't right. I look at myself, and the first habit I'm going to ask myself is, am I building into relationships, both for myself and for others around me? Am I practicing mindfulness for happiness and well-being? Am I reflecting on happy memories and helping to recultivate that energy of happiness and joy in my life and spreading it with others? Or am I like little Miss Negative Nelly spreading doom and gloom? I know when I enter a space and start being the one to point out negativity, something is off. And I don't want to bring that toxic energy into others. So I even do a quick shift. I'm like, okay, think about a happy memory. And then your body doesn't even always realize when something is real happening in the moment, or if it's something that happened in the past. Research shows us that when you reflect on happy memories, your body releases the same chemical endorphins of joy and happiness as if it was happening in real time. Practicing gratitude. Being in gratitude helps you be in the moment. It helps you look for joy and happiness and well-being. Taking care of our bodies, exercise, healthy nutrition, food that's going to help release happy chemicals. Orange and yellow food, did you know it actually releases vitamins and nutrients into your body that helps your body release endorphins for happiness and well-being? And the final, spreading kindness. So practice mindfulness, we talked about at the beginning of our session, and that's going to be where we're even savoring the food that we eat. One of my favorite happiness habits is looking for the wow in your day, going for a forest walk or checking out your neighborhood and just looking for, wow, what is amazing. I recently had my teachers go on a learning walk throughout the school and ask that they look for the things to celebrate. Which classrooms made you want to stay longer and linger? Where did you want to find the wow? And we captured images and shared it on Seesaw to celebrate what was happening in our own community. It's a wow walk, an opportunity to look for what's good. Spreading kindness is one of the other most important happiness habits. So some of the actions that we take is that sense of kindness for ourselves. I love to buy myself flowers every week. It's an act of kindness that reminds me that I'm worth it. I can have beautiful things around me that help cultivate joy. Contributing to others is an incredibly important act of happiness, as we talked before. Caring for the environment can be an area where we spread kindness, and having service learning embedded in our school curriculum is another way that we can look at spreading kindness. So if you start thinking about your own community and doing a little bit of an audit, what's a pillar that you might want to just lean into and look at just one simple pillar in your own life and in your own community? So spreading kindness is that idea of the contribution to community vitality. So again, as a reminder, the first 5 people to donate 101 to the Toddle fundraiser for Satyarthi Foundation will have a 1-hour coaching call for creating a happiness plan for yourself. Toddle has done such an amazing job of helping us cultivate and care for community during a time when we may have felt more disconnected. But I think I've been interacting with more teachers around the globe now than I ever have in my life. And so this is a really great opportunity for us to even just be mindful and naming it as an opportunity for cultivating your own sense of happiness and well-being, that contribution to community vitality and being connected and building into relationship while spreading kindness to others. So if you are going to jump in and make the donation, email evidence to me by Sunday, May 16th to ethrelfall@gmail.com. You can hit me up on Facebook or Twitter. Either way, I'll be monitoring to see who jumps in, and I would love to give you your own happiness coaching session. So that opens us up to questions. There's so much more I could have said with you today. We could have had a 3-day workshop, but really the message I'd love to get across today is that there are really simple things that you can do to both audit your own sense of happiness and then cultivating it in your life. So let's see what questions are coming up in the chat area.
We have a few comments in the chat section, Erin, which I thought we could pick up and discuss. And if any one of you all have any questions, you can put it in the Q&A box in the panel below. So Erin, we found that there was one educator who said something like, I find that disconnecting is almost impossible to, especially with the lockdown that has spoiled parents to expect 24/7 attention. It makes it so hard to have that time.
Could not agree more. And this is an area where any leaders on the call, I really encourage you to step in and set those boundaries for teachers. Teachers right now are really our frontline workers, and they're the ones who their hearts are so committed to the children and to the parents that they don't want to say no. But so as educators within the leadership domain, it's really important that we communicate to families, here are the times when our teachers will be online. And because we really value their well-being, we're also going to expect that there are times when they are not available. During those times, we want them to be doing things to cultivate their own happiness and well-being. Making sure that we're also modeling what that looks like. So even saying lunch hour for this 1 hour, nobody's available. Also thinking about your own, as a school, your school's own online learning plan. For my school, when we developed our learning moments, we intentionally mapped out times on a daily planner that said, disconnect, go for a walk in nature, disconnect, do some arts and crafts at home. So finding ways where we're not in front of that blue light, where we're not online all the time, it is so crucial. I know, easier said than done, but it's important.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And I think you were talking about it during your presentation as well, that you spend so much of time on the screen and then you go back and to relax, you're again on Netflix on the screen. So I think breaking that loop is really, really crucial. And the minute you make that start is when you can see the ripple effects. Another comment that we had, which I thought was worth acknowledging, is that I have found recently that if management does not have relevant or recent classroom experience, then they have very little understanding about the time pressures of the role. And I guess over here, she's talking about a teacher. I understand they have an agenda, but when the teacher time is pulled away from the teaching, planning, preparing, or assessing, then the pupils are not put first.
Okay, so educators on the call, I'm going to talk to the leaders who are in the call right now. It is so important that there is a sense of empathy. Now, teachers also have to have an awareness of the big picture. Equally, that compassion for the leaders in our sphere of thinking about everything that's on their shoulders and on their plate as well, so that we can have that full picture perspective. But the comment there was specifically talking about educators who may be disconnected from the classroom, who never really had that strong classroom background. And there's where I would coach a school leader to do a shadow walk. So both shadow a student for a day and the different divisions within the school, shadow a teacher for a day, have those conversations. What is your time like? How are you spending it? I can understand that there are so many competing challenges. Being a school leader, I know there's so many competing challenges that come in where you feel like one way or the other, you're not going to make everyone happy. But if we make the choices where the learner is at the center, and making sure that we're able to justify the choices we're making by how the learner is at the center, then we're going to be able to make decisions that have the ripple effects for the well-being of others. Looking at the well-being of our teachers then is really important, because if our teachers aren't well, the students aren't going to be well. So hopefully there can be that open dialogue within your community to be able to say, we're struggling with this right now. Can you help us out? Where can we support one another a little bit better? Looking at this as a partnership. We're in this together and we have to look after one another, and making sure it's that reciprocal loop within our communities of teachers looking after the children, children looking after one another, leadership looking after teachers, and then making sure we're all looking after one another together, including the leadership that's within your community.
Yeah, I think that is such a beautiful thought. Like everybody does their little part and then the community is able to stand together. Another thing, Erin, which is also something that as an educator, I have struggled with, is guilt. The feeling of that if I stop now, or if I draw boundaries now, am I doing enough? And, you just get caught in that, maybe I should be doing, maybe I shouldn't. So how do teachers deal with that?
Oh goodness, I can relate to that so well. And I can say that stepping back and asking yourself, is this little thing that I'm feeling guilty about doing or not doing really going to make a tremendous difference? So in a way of asking yourself, if the main thing is the main thing, and the main thing is making sure that children are learning, is this other thing that I'm investing all my time with really going to contribute to this? I can speak from personal experience. Sometimes it feels like no matter what you do, it's not enough. And so being able to step back and identify for yourself some clear performance indicators of what you're after. So if we were to think about what industry does outside of education, they can look at it and say, what is really, really important right now? And let me make sure I put that at front and center. And the rest of it, I need to put aside. And I need to say, okay, maybe I only do one lesson with really cute. Okay, I used to be guilty of spending forever trying to make everything look really cute and perfect. And maybe no one else on the call is like this, but I did. And then I had to step back and go, wait a minute, hold on. If I spend 2 hours on this, is that really worth it? Whereas I could have had a half hour on this, a half hour to myself, a half hour for my son. And at the end of the day, it wasn't worth that investment. I think the other thing is reminding ourselves we're not good for anyone when we're burnout. And so making sure we're looking at that sense of self-care. So some other things have to go by the wayside, and that has to be okay. It's a sense of setting boundaries for self-care and self-advocacy. And if you're at a place where you're not able to set those boundaries, then I would recommend finding a coach or an ally that you could have in your community that you could say, look at this with me. Where am I investing time that I shouldn't be investing my time?
Yeah, I do agree. Like, having an external perspective, it opens up like what we call blind spots that we're not even looking at. And yeah, so that was like really amazing, Erin. Thank you.
You're welcome. And that notion of blind spots, Acta, is so important. I work with a coach. And there was one time where we sat down and looked at everything. And then the coach went, okay, look, there's all this stuff on here. Erin, it's not the main thing. This isn't worth it. And hearing that come back, and he was like, oh, yeah, that's right. That's not worth it.
Yeah, and Erin, as we're both speaking, the chat box is going alive with so many conversations, people supporting each other, telling them what they do, how they are helping each other. So I think that whole concept of community getting together to help each other out is actually being played right now in the chat box. And there is just so much of appreciation for your presentation, and people are asking like if they would be able to have access to it. And also the survey, the happiness index survey, maybe that is something they want to take across to their organizations and see how they fare as individuals within a community.
Absolutely. So there's two things I'll do. I will, the presentation, I believe, will be archived from Toddle, and so that recording will be available. For the slides, if people reach out to me through Happiness 101, Teaching Our Children the Habits for Happiness on, it's a Facebook page. I'll go back and show you what the logo looks like, if this will let me go backwards. So if you go on to Happiness 101 and like it and send me a message, I will send to you some resources. Now, here's the thing. The Happiness 101 survey that I do with children, I have learned, I don't just hand it away. It requires a conversation, because what I found was there was a little bit of time where I was giving it away and it wasn't being used in the intention that it was designed for. So it was giving the wrong information. And that wasn't by ill intent. It was just, it needs a conversation to understand how to use it. I'll also drop the link to the Happiness Alliance survey in the Happiness 101 Facebook page. So I'll put in some resources there if you like Happiness 101 on Facebook. And I'm more than happy to jump on some calls and with schools and organizations that are interested in doing an audit and then setting a happiness plan for their schools. Most importantly, though, begin with yourself. Where are you in your own sense of happiness and well-being, and cultivating that in your own lives?
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Erin. If you could drop in like your contact details so people can get in touch with you.
Absolutely.
And feel, yeah.
I will absolutely do that. I'll put that in chat right now. And let's see if I can do that actually. I don't know if I actually, there it is. All right.
And with that, Erin, I think we've come to the end of the session. If you could really see the appreciation in the chat box, people are just so grateful. They're saying like it has brought in so much of positivity. It was a soulful session. There's so much that they want to take back and introspect and probably implement. So even I would also like to take this opportunity to thank you for giving us this wonderful session and making us introspect on how we can be owners of our own happiness. If you could also just go to the last slide. If there's any feedback for anybody about the sessions, please feel free to reach out to us. The details are on the last slide, which will be shared with you right now.
Oh, sorry, working my way to it.
No worries. And in the meanwhile, just another reminder about the COVID Relief Fund that we are working towards. I can see that some of you all have said that you have contributed the $101, and hopefully that money would go to make a difference in the lives of a lot of children. And we really appreciate that, Erin. Thank you so much for doing that again. And thank you everybody for attending. We have our next session, which is with Dipanshu Arora. It is a toddle walkthrough of the MYP platform. If there are any MYP teachers over here or just IB educators who want to know more about Toddle, please make sure you join that session happening at 6 p.m. now. Okay. With that, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a beautiful day, and just walk out into this day, I hope, a little bit happier.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.